The silence in his hospital room smelled like bleach and betrayal. I was 7 years old, standing beside a bed so high my feet dangled. I was supposed to be at my cousin's birthday party. Instead, I was here. My father, Rick, lay pale against the white sheets. There was no visible injury, no tubes, just the aura of sickness. He whispered, his voice weak. "Caitlin, my heart, it's just so tired. It misses you so much when you're gone." I clutched a crudely drawn crayon card. "I know, Daddy. I'm sorry I didn't visit sooner. Mom said it wasn't visiting hours yet." He didn't look at her. He only looked at me. His kind eyes filled with a sadness so deep it felt like my fault. "You're the only one who truly understands, kiddo. The doctors, they don't get it, but you do. You're my anchor. When you're not here, the pain just gets worse." He reached out a trembling hand. I took it. His grip was tight, cold. In that moment, I learned the first crucial lesson. My presence was his medicine. My absence was his suffering. A 7-year-old was responsible for keeping a grown man alive. And that was the first invisible chain. The cycle became my life's rhythm. Every milestone, every success, every fleeting moment of happiness I tried to claim for myself was met with a crisis. "You can't move to the city for art school, Caitlin. Who will check my blood pressure? That new boyfriend of yours, Mark, he seems nice, but he keeps you away from me. I think he's trying to isolate you. I need help with rent this month. Don't worry about your savings account. You can make that money back. I can't." The financial control was slow, a gradual draining. He never took everything, just enough to ensure I could never quite stand on my own. Always alone, always a favor, always an emergency that only I could solve. His illnesses became legendary. The mysterious lump, the dizzy spells that always happened right before a family vacation, the time he texted me at 3 a.m. from the ER because his kidneys were shutting down. I'd drop everything. I'd drive for hours. I'd rush in, breathless, only to find him watching a golf tournament, looking perfectly fine. "Oh, sweetheart, I feel much better now. Just seeing your face cured me. You shouldn't have worried. You always worry too much." Did I worry too much? Was I overreacting? Was I being paranoid? The gaslighting was a constant low-grade fever. I'd argue a fact, only for him to look at me, head tilted, and say, "Caitlin, you have a terrible memory. That never happened." Eventually, you stop trusting your memory. You stop trusting your sanity. You only trust the person who claims to be the only constant in your life, him. By age 27, I was an expert at failure. The last big relationship, with a man named David, had ended a month prior. Dad had spent 6 months painting David as a manipulative sociopath, sending me anonymous panicked texts about David's temper, David's secret debt, David's true colors. The lies worked, the doubt was planted, the fights became unbearable. When David finally walked out, I was a shell, and there was only one place to go, back to him. His basement was my coffin. I lived among his storage boxes, old report cards, his college trophies, broken furniture, a physical landscape of his past. I was working a dead-end job, paying him board that was nearly double the market rate, and spending every evening on the sofa watching whatever he wanted. The isolation was complete. Friends stopped calling. They'd tried. They'd heard the vague warnings about my father's frailty and my need to be close by. They gave up. One rainy Tuesday night, I was scrolling through old photos. A picture of me and David, laughing on a beach. A tiny pinprick of rebellion. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad, who was 2 rooms away in his recliner. "Dad, I'm worried about you, Caitlin. You look so down. That boyfriend really damaged you. I blame myself for not protecting you better. But don't worry, you're home now. You're safe. I will never leave you." The words were meant to be comforting, but they hit me like a jail door slamming shut. I will never leave you. It wasn't a promise of protection. It was a threat of permanence. I stared at the screen. My heart didn't break. It shattered. That night, lying on the stale basement mattress, I realized the truth. I wasn't 27. I was still that 7-year-old girl in the hospital room, trapped by a debt I could never repay. But the debt was fake. The illness was fake. The only thing real was my prison. The decision was silent, instantaneous. Tonight. I crept out of the basement. Every floorboard was a landmine. The hallway was pitch black, lit only by the faint glow of the street lamp filtering through the cheap blinds. I had no plan, no money, no destination, only an absolute paralyzing need to breathe air that he hadn't exhaled. I went to my childhood bedroom, now a guest room, where I kept my only valuable possession, an old hiking backpack. I moved like a ghost. I grabbed the basics, my passport, 1 change of clothes, my phone charger, and a few $100s I'd hoarded from groceries. I shoved it all into the pack. No sentimental items, no evidence. The zipper was loud. Too loud. I froze, pressing my ear against the wood. His snoring continued, uneven, the sound of a man feigning deep sleep, or perhaps just a man who knows he has total control. I tiptoed to the front door. The deadbolt. Heavy. Metallic. My fingers trembled on the cold brass. Every ounce of fear he had ever instilled in me, the fear of his health, the fear of his anger, the fear of his sadness, was boiling into a single overwhelming thought. If he wakes up right now, he will stop me. The lock turned with a thunk that echoed through the silent house. I swung the backpack onto my shoulders. It was heavy. My breath hitched. 1 step. 2 steps. I was on the porch. The air was cold, crisp. I turned back for a split second. The dark house stood there solid and suffocating. This is it, Rick. I'm gone. I ran down the driveway. I didn't look back again. I ran until the fear in my chest turned into the first fragile spark of freedom. My cart was old, rattling, but in those early hours, it was the fastest, most beautiful escape pod in the world. I didn't stop until the sun began to paint the sky a bruised purple. I drove until the license plates around me changed, the road signs felt alien, and the exhaustion felt physical, not emotional. The fear was a living thing in the passenger seat. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, certain I'd see his familiar sedan gaining on me. I pulled over at a roadside rest stop, my hands aching from gripping the wheel. First action, burn the bridge. I went to a generic big box store and bought a burner phone. I changed my number instantly. I recorded a new anonymous voicemail greeting on the old line before turning it off and throwing the SIM card into a dumpster. I knew he would try the old number first. I needed him to scream into the void. I drove hundreds of miles south, picking a city I'd only heard of once, known for its sheer anonymity. No connections, no shared history, just me and my pack. I rented a tiny, miserable room from an old woman who accepted cash and asked no questions. The windows faced the brick wall. It was perfect. A coffin of my own making, But this time, the lid was unlatched. The first few weeks were not liberation. They were a nightmare of hypervigilance. I found a terrible, low-paying waitressing job at a diner where no one spoke my name right. Every single time the bell above the door jingled, I flinched, expecting to see his face. Every notification on my new burner phone made my heart jump into my throat. I would secretly turn on my old phone twice a week, just for a moment, just to check the damage. The voicemail count was always in double digits. The messages were a carefully orchestrated symphony of guilt. "Caitlin, please, I need you. I'm having chest pains again. I'm scared to call an ambulance alone. Is this what you wanted, to watch your father die alone? I know you're listening to this. How could you do this? After everything I sacrificed for you, your abandonment proves how selfish you really are. I need the documents from the safety deposit box. Call me back now. I miss you. It's too quiet here. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel anything less than perfect. Just call me sweetheart. I love you. You know I love you." The guilt was a physical weight. It pressed down on me, crushing my appetite, stealing my sleep. He is genuinely sick. He is alone. I am the reason he is suffering. That programming drilled in since I was 7 didn't disappear just because I drove away. My brilliant escape felt like a colossal, cruel mistake. I took the money I had and spent the first small chunk on therapy. Not just any therapist, one who specialized in family trauma and specifically narcissistic abuse. She gave a name to the monster that had stolen my life: covert manipulation. Your father taught you that your value was tied to his needs, Caitlin. The panic you feel is withdrawal. You're detoxing from his control.
The therapy was agonizing, but it gave me a vocabulary for my pain. It was the first time in my life someone had validated my reality. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to change. I got a better job at a small gallery. It wasn't my dream, but it was mine. I started painting again, hiding my canvases in the tiny storage closet. I met other people who didn't know Rick, people who liked me, Caitlin, the woman who laughed at bad jokes and drank too much coffee. They were real friends. No hidden agendas, no emotional debts. One afternoon, I sat in a park with my new friends, Sarah and Leo, eating cheap takeout. We were talking about something ridiculous, a truly terrible movie we'd all seen. I laughed, a deep, free, unrestrained laugh. It was the most genuine sound I had ever made. I looked at Sarah, then at the bright, open sky. 6 months. I was still here. He hadn't found me. His health had clearly not failed. The lies were exposed. The panic was finally beginning to recede. I had survived the withdrawal. I had rebuilt a tiny, perfect life in a strange city. I had finally severed the invisible chain. I was safe. I thought, I did it. I'm free. Then the pocket in my jeans buzzed. It wasn't the sound of the old dormant phone. It was the new burner. The number was blocked, unknown. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. I hesitated, the laughter still warm on my lips. Leo noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied, already reaching for the phone. "Just a telemarketer." I swiped to answer, my heart doing a sickening flip. I held it to my ear, the sound of the park, the birds, and my friends' voices instantly muted. A new voice, smooth and professional, spoke, a voice I didn't recognize. "Hello, is this Miss Caitlin Gritt? We're calling from St. Jude's Medical Center. We're trying to locate the closest emergency contact for a patient named Richard G. The air left my lungs. The ground beneath me tilted. The laughter was gone. The peace was shattered. I had run hundreds of miles. I had changed my name. I had changed my number. But somehow, he had still found the one definitive way to reach out and pull me back. My fingers fumbled, dropping the phone. It clattered to the grass. Leo was saying my name, but it was distant, underwater. Sarah was on her knees, picking up my phone, her brows furrowed. St. Jude's Medical Center. Caitlin, what's going on? I could only stare at her, shaking my head. The fear that had been dormant for months exploded. He'd done it. He'd found me. He was dying, or worse, he was already. The phone rang again. It wasn't St. Jude's. It was a local number, unfamiliar. I snatched it from Sarah, my hand slit with sweat. Hello? My voice was a whisper. Mrs. Caitlin Gritt, this is Arthur Finch. I'm an attorney. I represent the estate of Richard G. I'm calling to inform you of your father's passing. My world stopped. The birdsong, the distant traffic, the worried murmurs of my friends, everything dissolved. The only sound was the lawyer's dry, professional tone confirming the impossible. Your father passed away 2 days ago. We've been attempting to reach you. He named you as his sole beneficiary. Passed away. The words were cold, precise. Relief hit first, sharp and shocking, a wave of pure, unadulterated freedom so potent it made me dizzy. He was gone. He couldn't hurt me anymore. He couldn't pull me back. Then came the grief, a bizarre alien grief for the father I'd always wanted him to be, the loving, protective dad from my earliest, most innocent memories, the man whose illness I felt responsible for. And then the guilt, gnawing, insidious. He died alone. He died believing I abandoned him. I ended the call numbly, without truly understanding. My friends drove me home, asking questions I couldn't answer. I just sat there, staring out the window, a hollow space in my chest. 2 weeks later, I was back in my hometown. The funeral was a blur. A handful of distant relatives, a few of his old golf buddies. Nobody truly knew the man. Nobody knew my version of him. I spoke a few empty words, played the role of the grieving daughter, and felt like a fraud. Then came the reading of the will. Arthur Finch, the lawyer, was a stoic man with thin-rimmed glasses. He sat opposite me in his stark, silent office, a heavy document open before him. Richard G. was a man of particular wishes, he stated, adjusting his glasses. My stomach clenched. Even in death he had a script. He read through the preamble, listing assets, the house, a small savings, an old family heirloom watch. All of it, without exception, was bequeathed to me, sole beneficiary. I braced myself for a lecture, a hidden message in his will. But this was generous, confusingly so. Then Finch cleared his throat. However, Mr. G attached a condition to this inheritance. My blood ran cold. There it is.
His will states, unequivocally, that for you to receive any portion of his estate, the house, the funds, the family watch, all of it, you must fulfill one specific requirement. He paused, looking directly at me, as if testing my reaction. You must move back into his house, Ms. Gritt, and reside there, alone, for a full year. No overnight guests, no long absences, a full 12 months, to honor his memory and understand the true meaning of home. A full year back in that house, his house, the house of secrets, of gaslighting, of invisible chains, the house I had risked everything to escape. My breath hitched. My mouth was dry. He can't be serious. Finch's expression remained unchanged. It is explicitly stated, should you fail to complete the full year or violate any of the conditions, the entire estate immediately passes to a distant cousin. There are no exceptions. He closed the document with a soft thud. The choice, Ms. Grit, is entirely yours. I walked out of that office in a daze. The city streets felt wrong. The air was heavy. I drove back to his empty house. The key felt like a branding iron in my palm. The front door creaked open, revealing the familiar, suffocating darkness. The scent of his old cologne, stale and haunting, lingered in the air. I walked through the silent rooms, each one a monument to a lie. His recliner, still imprinted with his shape, the empty medicine cabinet, the kitchen counter where he'd left notes for me. The house was cold, but it wasn't just the lack of heat. It was the presence of an absence. His presence, everywhere. I found the will on the kitchen table where I'd tossed it, the lawyer's neat handwriting mocking me. To honor his memory? To understand the true meaning of home? This wasn't an inheritance. This was a trap. A final, meticulously planned act of manipulation. A will from beyond the grave. He wasn't just leaving me a house. He was leaving me a prison. He was forcing me to return to the very place I had fled, to live with his ghost, to re-experience every single ounce of control and isolation I had fought so hard to escape. And if I refused, I lost everything. Not just the money, but the idea of reconciliation, of reclaiming a part of my family history. I'd be confirming his final bitter narrative. She abandoned me. I sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the will. The words blurred. My father, Rick, was dead. But he wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. This was his final, most twisted game. And I was already playing. The next week was a blur of caffeine and sleepless desperation. The house was a museum of my trauma. And now, I was the only permanent exhibit. I couldn't sleep in the basement. I couldn't sleep in my old childhood room. I slept on the living room sofa, my hiking backpack, my symbol of freedom, tucked tight beneath the cushion. I felt like I was camping inside a beast's hollowed-out carcass. I called my therapist, Dr. Chen, constantly. Her voice was the only thing tethering me to sanity. "Caitlin, we need to look at this clearly," she advised, her voice calm against my frantic breathing. "He is dead. He cannot physically harm you. This is an attempt at control, yes, but it is purely symbolic now. What does the money buy you?" I choked out. "It buys me stability. It buys me the down payment I needed. It buys me the chance to finish school, to open my own gallery. It buys me real freedom, Dr. Chen, not this fearful waitress freedom." I debated with Sarah and Leo on frantic late-night calls. They were horrified. "Leo, you can't go back, Caitlin. It's an insane stipulation. The money isn't worth your sanity." "Sarah, we'll help you. We can pool our resources. We can have fundraisers. Anything but going back into that cage." Their love was genuine, but they didn't understand the true weight of the inheritance. It wasn't just a house. It was the opportunity to erase my debt, to finally lift the crushing financial anxiety that Rick had strategically maintained for years. The guilt was a constant hum. Why would he do this if he didn't secretly love me? Maybe he just wanted me to remember where I came from. The decision felt impossible because every corner of the house contained a memory reminding me why I had to leave and why I felt obliged to stay. Flashback 1. I'm 15, showing him an A-plus essay. He smiles, then sighs. That's lovely, sweetheart. But if you spend too much time on that, who will remember to fill my pill box? Priorities, Caitlin. Priorities. He valued my care over my achievement. Flashback 2. I'm 20, excitedly telling him about a backpacking trip. He pretends to cough violently, clutching his chest. Oh, just go have your fun. Don't worry about me bleeding out here alone. I'm just your old, sick father. He weaponized his health to destroy my joy. Flashback 3. The night before I left for the first time to university, he gave me a heavy framed photo of himself. Keep this close, kiddo. When things get rough, just look at my face and remember who needs you the most. He demanded to be my focal point. To return to the house for a year was to deliberately open myself up to these memories, to let the ghost of his control walk beside me every day. It was a year of solitary confinement, designed to break the independence I had just started to build. The pressure wasn't just internal. It started coming from the periphery. My father, the charming, misunderstood widower, had always excelled at public relations. Distant Aunt Carol called, then Uncle Jerry. Caitlin, I know you and Rick had your differences, but he loved you. This is his final gift. He just wants you to appreciate his legacy. It's not much to ask, just 1 year. Think of the house. It's worth a fortune now. He told me he always worried about you out there alone. He's giving you stability. Don't throw away your inheritance because you're being stubborn. Honor your father. It's the right thing to do. They saw a grieving daughter wrestling with an eccentric but generous will. They didn't see the victim staring down her tormentor's final cage. They amplified his narrative. Rick was generous. Caitlin is selfish and ungrateful. The deadline loomed, 30 days from the date of death to formally accept or reject the terms. The clock was ticking down the minutes of my freedom. The last night of the decision period was a cold, starless Thursday. I sat at his old desk, the will spread out, a pen in my hand. Option A, walk away. Pros, immediate, complete, and permanent freedom, safety, preservation of my fragile sanity, and my new life in the city. Cons, financial ruin, continuing to work 3 jobs, never reaching my dreams, losing the only tangible piece of my family's history, and letting Rick win by proving I was too unstable and weak to handle his condition. Option B, accept the terms. Pros, financial security for life. The house is mine. I can sell it after a year and invest. I can build the life I actually want. Cons, a year of psychological torment, isolation, risk of permanent damage to my mental health. The ultimate surrender to his final act of control. I looked at the pen. My hand hovered over the signature line on the acceptance page. A year, 12 months, 365 days. Could I survive it? Could I live in the belly of the beast and not let it consume me? I heard his phantom voice, cold and clear from the corner of the room. You need me, Caitlin. You always have. I closed my eyes, took a ragged breath, and remembered the feeling of running down the driveway, the cold air hitting my face, the first taste of freedom. That feeling was worth everything. But the fear of poverty, of being eternally stuck, was a powerful tool he had honed perfectly. I opened my eyes. I looked at the signature line. I looked at the window. I lifted the pen. I signed the document. I stood up, the will now legally binding. I put the signed document into an envelope. Then, without allowing myself to hesitate, I walked out of the house, locked the door, and drove straight to the lawyer's office. dropping the envelope into the night deposit box. I drove back to my small rented room in the new city. I walked into the tiny bathroom, opened the lid of the toilet tank, and took out my old phone, the one with the hundreds of Rick's desperate voicemails. I had kept it, a dark, silent monument. I set a calendar reminder on my new phone, 365 days. I picked up the old phone, walked out the front door, and hurled it across the dark street. I had signed the acceptance. The lawyer, Arthur Finch, confirmed the terms the next morning. My decision was final. I would return to the cage for a year to claim my future. I didn't drive back immediately. I spent a week saying goodbye to the life I had built. I told Sarah and Leo the terrifying truth. I faced their horrified reactions. Leo, "You signed it? Caitlin, this is suicide." Sarah, "Please, if you get in trouble, if you feel trapped, you call us. Instantly. We will drive there right now and drag you out." I needed their fear. Their horror was my anchor to sanity. I promised them I would call every single night. When I finally drove back into my old city, I didn't drive to the house first. I drove to the cemetery. The weather was bleak. I stood before his grave, the polished granite bearing his name, Richard G., 1966 to 2024. I didn't weep. I spoke, my voice low, raw, and steady.
"You thought you had me, didn't you, Rick? You thought you could control me forever. You thought I would run away from this choice, proving to your family and to myself that I was too weak to handle responsibility." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, metallic object, the key to his front door. "This house, this money, all of it, you meant it as a final test, a trap, a way to prove that I still needed your provision, that I was nothing without your structure." I walked up to the grave. I didn't throw the key. I placed it gently on the cold stone. "I'm taking the house, Rick. I'm taking the money, but I'm not doing it to honor your memory. I'm doing it to erase your control. You wanted me to come back and worship your ghost. Instead, I'm coming back to conduct the exorcism." I turned and walked away. No guilt, only cold surgical resolve. The emotional chains were already broken. Now I was claiming the collateral. I didn't just live in the house. I occupied it. I claimed it. The terms of the will were strict. Stay for a year, no guests. But they said nothing about decorating, demolishing, or transforming. I started with his den, the room where he had conducted his worst emotional warfare. I tore out the heavy curtains, flooding the room with light. I painted the deep, suffocating green walls a vibrant, clean white. I burned the old dust-filled guest towels. I smashed the cheap, tacky figurines he always insisted on displaying. Every swing of the hammer, every coat of white paint was a defiant act of healing. This wasn't Rick's house anymore. It was a construction site for Caitlin's future. I threw out the sofa I'd slept on during my rock bottom, replacing it with a small desk where I wrote my thoughts. I went through his papers, not out of curiosity, but necessity. I found boxes of fake medical bills he'd used to elicit sympathy and financial support. I took pictures of every one. Proof. The biggest challenge was the silence, the constant, looming presence of his ghost. He would have wanted me to be miserable, paralyzed by solitude. Instead, I used the time. I worked remotely for the gallery. I enrolled in online art history courses. I filled the house with the sounds of my life, music I liked, podcasts, video calls with Sarah and Leo. The guilt tried to creep back, whispering, "You're desecrating your father's legacy." But I would look at the evidence, the fake bills, the journal entries I had saved, and the ghost would retreat. The legacy wasn't love. It was control. The year ended at 12:01 a.m. on the anniversary of my return. I didn't wait for the morning. I straight drove to the lawyer's office with the certificate of residency in hand. Arthur Finch barely reacted. The terms were met. The house, the savings, the funds, everything was legally mine. I sold the house 2 months later. I didn't hesitate.
used the money to buy a small loft apartment in my new city, a space with huge sunlit windows. I opened my own small art studio and gallery, focusing on abstract works that explored trauma and healing. My life was no longer defined by reaction to my father. It was defined by creation. The peace was profound. It wasn't the fleeting peace of an escape. It was the bedrock stability of a life built entirely on my own terms. My freedom wasn't granted. It was earned. My true purpose emerged from the wreckage of my past. I realized that my most valuable asset wasn't the money Rick left me, but the voice he tried so hard to silence. I started this YouTube channel, Voices of Caitlin Grit, to speak for the others trapped in the invisible cages of family manipulation. I share my story raw and unedited to give others the vocabulary, the courage, and the roadmap to their own escape. Boundaries are not cruel. They are necessary. Healing is not linear. It is a fierce, defiant journey back to yourself. I am 29 now, free. He tried to control my life, my narrative, and even my death. He lost. I am the voice of my own story. The final twisted game he played was the ultimate gift. It forced me to confront the chains one last time, to break them, and to walk away with both my sanity and my security intact. If this story hit close to home, subscribe to Voices of Caitlin Grit for more real stories of women breaking free and reclaiming their lives. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone, and comment below, what was the moment you finally walked away? You are stronger than you know. I'll see you in the next one.